Guys, please confirm to me. All of you are getting my voice on screen. Those are attending in online. Is my voice on screen is clear to all of you guys? Is my voice on screen is clear to all of you guys? Yeah, guys, thank you. Thanks a lot. Yeah, Praveen, I'm not getting it. Java 9 version, the same link. We can use it. Same link. We can use there. Right, sir. Right, and check it what we completed in the last session, what we understand in the last class. So we are discussing about the servers topic. So in a client server architecture, we are discussing about in a client server architecture, client we completed, protocol also we completed. After that, server we are discussing. All right, in the servers already we started bit introduction part. Try to understand it clearly. Okay, right, sir. All right, sir. In client server architecture, what is this server actually? Server is not a computer. It is a special software installed in a computer to serve a request from clients. Okay, to serve client request. Instead of saying this, we can. It's better to specify like what that to serve client's request. In web applications, the role of the server is to display or hold an application. That means to manage applications, that is web application, to receive requests from clients, to identify the requested resource in a server side application, to execute the requested resource, to generate dynamic response from the requested resource, to dispatch the generated dynamic response to the respective client. Examples are Tomcat, WebLogic, JBoss, Glassfish, and so on and so on and so on. Right, sir. All these servers are divided into two types. What are the two types of these servers now? Web servers and application servers. What is the difference between web server and application server? What exactly the differences between web server and application server? Right, sir. Very, very simple difference. No, try to understand it clearly. Web servers are able to provide environment to execute only web applications. Web servers are able to provide environment to execute only web applications. Understand my point clearly? Not providing environment to execute enterprise, that means distributed applications, remote based distributed applications. Understand my point? But application servers are able to provide very good environment to execute both web applications and distributed applications. That's the main point. Why it is the concept? Why it is the point? For example, if we take any distributed applications where EasyABC is a technology we are using, for example, there we require so many middleware services. What are the various middleware services we required? JNDI is the best one. JTA, JCA, Java Mail, JAS, Java Authentication and Authorization Services. Understand my point now? Like this. So many middleware services here we required. All these middleware services are in general are provided by application servers only, not by what their web servers. Moreover, web applications doesn't require these many middleware services. In general, distributed applications required middleware services like this. Only distributed applications required middleware services, but web servers doesn't require, web applications doesn't require these middleware services. Distributed applications required middleware services. Because of that reason, distributed applications are not supported by, are not executed by web servers. Distributed applications are executed by the application servers only. Why? Because application servers are providing middleware services as a default support, inbuilt support. Understand my point or not? So this is the main difference between web server and application server. Simple point. Try to understand it clearly now. Web server, web servers are able to provide environment, are able to provide environment to execute only web applications. Web servers are able to provide environment to execute only web applications. Okay. Web servers are not providing an environment to execute distributed applications. Distributed applications. This is a point here we have to understand. Next one is after this, after completion of this, application servers are able to provide very good environment. This application servers are able to provide very good environment to execute both web applications and distributed applications. Both web applications and what they're distributed applications. That's it. Both applications are executed by the application servers. This is point number one. Understand it clearly. All right, sir. Next one is point number two. In general, web servers are not providing middleware services. Like what are the middleware services? No, JTA, JNDI. Understand my point here? JAS, then after this JMS, and so on and so on and so on. So many. All these middleware services are not provided by the like web servers. But in general, all the application servers are providing middleware services. Like these are the middleware services which are provided by like what there, all the application servers. Understand it clearly now? I think JTA, Java Transaction API. Right, sir. So these are the 2 points here we can understand. Okay. Any example for web servers and any example for application servers? No. Right, sir. So many examples are available. If we talk about the examples for servers, that means if we talk about the examples for this web servers now, say for example, Oracle Web, Resin, and so on. Okay, and one more thing I'm telling to you, up to Tomcat 5.5 version is still web server. Up to Tomcat 5.5 version is a web server. Yes, sir. All of you are getting it or not? But over the Tomcat 5.5, now at present Tomcat 11 version is going on. So this server is like what there. In general, people are saying that application server after this Tomcat 5.5 version, but still my thinking is what there. It is just above the web server, below of the application server. 100% services are not provided by Tomcat server. I get my point on it. For distributed applications, it is not giving 100% services. 100% service are not provided by this Tomcat server. Some features are not available. Simple example I'm telling there. If we want to provide, if we want to make any server as an application server, it must give EJB's application support, EJB's execution support. EJB's support is required. But Tomcat is not supporting EJB's. That's the problem. But more than web, see, still it is providing some middleware services like what there JNDI it is providing. I get my point or not? JNDI it is providing, and JTA also it is providing some services it is giving there, but still it is not supporting what there EJBs and it's related. But if without supporting for EJBs, no, how can we think of it as an application server? The main concept of distributed applications is what there EJBs, no. Definitely it has to support, but it is not supporting now. So that's why it's a bit confusion about the Tomcat server. We cannot say it's a web server. We cannot say it's what there an application server. We can say that it's above the web server and below of the application server. That's why that every time the Tomcat is an on air only. It's a question mark kind of content only. But still it is giving some support. For web applications, excellent support we are able to get. Basic level support it is providing. That's why in general what people are using there this Tomcat now as a startup server for learning also people are utilizing this Tomcat. That's what their startup server nowadays people are using what their this Tomcat. But real enterprise applications if you want to use there nobody is using what there nobody is using Tomcat. Everybody is using what there some other servers here in our application. But I need to talk about one more point. Try to understand it clearly. Now here examples for these application servers. If you observe this, WebLogic is a perfect example for that means application server. Next one is Wildfly is a perfect example. Wildfly in the sense JBoss. Previously it is what there JBoss. Next one is what there Glassfish. Glassfish is another one, and so on some other. Got it or not? Okay. Now nowadays enterprise applications are not having much concentration on servers. Really, I'm telling you, nowadays enterprise applications are not having much concentration on servers. Okay, why it is the case now? I will explain some content to you. Now try to understand it clearly. All of you observe these points clearly. In the evolution of this application development, changes are available in the application development. What are the various changes are available at present? What we have there previously? I want to compare a little bit. Try to understand it now. When microservices concept is coming into the picture, the total development part is changed. Totally that methodology was changed. Before microservices, what happened? After microservices, what happened? I will give some example. Understand it clearly. Before microservices, what happened here? Total, complete enterprise application we have to prepare. In that enterprise application, how many services are available? Maybe 100 services are available. All these 100 services are packed in a single application. That is single application, that the complete application must be configured, must be deployed into a single server. The complete application must be deployed into what their single server. That single server has to manage this complete application. That single application server has to provide services for our entire application. That's the situation. See, understand it now? We have one enterprise application. It's a simple, small scale application. If we take now, Durgasoft is an application, for example. Durgasoft is an organization. For that, we want to prepare an enterprise application. Inside this Durgasoft application, what services here we have to maintain, what layers here, what domains here we have to maintain, what poles we have to maintain there. Say for example, inside the Durgasoft enterprise application there, employee management system we have to include, student management system we have to include, courses management system we have to include, and the schedules management system we have to include, classrooms management system we have to include. Like this, so many services are available. Yes, sir. And again here in the student management system, offline student management system, online student management system, like this, so many number of services we have to manage. Before microservices, what we are doing there, all these services we will be provided together. We will pack all of them in a single EAR file, or maybe a jar file, or maybe ER file, or WAR file, whatever it may be. EAR file we are going to prepare that complete the total application we are going to keep in a single server. The single server has to manage the total application. Single database will be used to connect with the single database. There only that entire application related database has to be managed. Now think of it, how much burden is coming to the application server. If it is a case now the server must be ineffective or not. If the server is not ineffective, our application will not be executed properly. Because of that reason only, by the time we are able to get like what there, when the burden is increased there, automatically server down content is going to be happen previously. Is a frequent server down, some issues are coming with the server. To manage this entire server and its administration, a separate team is available for it. A separate team is going on. The team is what? The server administration team. Okay, single server has to manage the complete application. Now tell me, if it is a case you should have more focus on the server or not? We should have more focus on the server and its services or not? That's the concept what I'm telling you now. But when microservices are coming into the picture, what happened? When microservices are coming to the picture, what exactly the things are going to be happen? Example I said to you, Durgasoft is an enterprise application. If you take there what are the various services I've taken there? Employee management system, student management system. Then what next one here? Courses management system. Like this, 6 or 7 number of services I've taken now. And then what microservices architecture is giving flexibility for us now? Separate one service, maintain a separate server for that service, maintain a separate database for that service. We can run independently this one. Take another service separately, maintain a separate server, maintain a separate database, execute independently. Like this, 5 separate services we can separate. All the services we can manage in different servers in a different databases, and finally establish communication between all the services. Previously, all services are in a single server, single database. Now, each and every service is able to run under a particular server and is able to manage a particular database. Now, burden is reduced to the server or not? Understand my point here? Now, burden is reduced to the server or not? But only the difficult task is what there? Maintaining communication between all the services. Establish communication between all the services. Get that we have to do. Now the simplified, the total architecture is simplified. Now if one service is running on one server, is there any requirement to put more focus on the server? Of course, minimal maintenance is required, that's okay. But burden is not available. Heavy burden is not available on server. Now it is running effectively or not? It is provided. Okay. It is providing services effectively or not? Yeah, that is an advantage of like what there microservices. Nowadays developers are not going to think too much about the servers. No, why? Because the server has to handle only one service, not more than one service kernel. Right or not? So because of this reason, nowadays people are not having much burden over the content about the servers and all. But conceptually we have to understand that. Okay, now coming to the point. Previously, everybody must have very good focus on the server. Nowadays, people are not having very much focus on the servers now. Am I right or not? Lightweight server is sufficient or not? Not required to take too much enterprise related server. Lightweight server is sufficient or not? Yeah, even nowadays might be Tomcat server is sufficient to run our microservices application. The simple Tomcat server is sufficient to run our microservices application. Understand my point, Ken? Of course, other service may be deployed in WebLogic. Some other service may be deployed in some other. Present service is deployed in Tomcat. You can use anything, but server is lightweight now. The server is becoming as what there is a lightweight component. So in that way, nowadays that implementation part is going on. That's why that is sufficient to take. It is very sufficient to take like what there lightweight servers nowadays in our application development. But even though it's a lightweight or a heavyweight, that doesn't matter for us. We have to understand that server and its implementation part. Part of our servlets now, if we want to deploy and execute our servlets now, here we have to understand all the points now. So because of that reason here, we have taken this server content here now. Okay, this is the point here I'm telling to you. Got it or not? One more point. If you want to talk about it now, little bit back if you go there, there I'm going to give some other information. Now try to understand it clearly. Almost all 20 years back, if you take now, at the initial stages of the client server architecture or enterprise application development, the meaning of web server and application server is totally different. At initial stages of the application, meaning of the web server, application server is totally different. At present, the meaning of the web server and application server is completely different. I'm giving the information. At initial stages, the purpose of the web server is what there to generate only static responses, to maintain a simple websites. Inside this website, just to provide navigation from one page to another page. For that purpose only web servers are available. Initially, very starting point. If you want to have any dynamic content, or if you want to execute something at server side, if you want to generate some dynamic content, initially people are depending on what their application servers. Get my point or not? So simple static pages and movement in between the static pages, flow of execution between static pages, that's the purpose of the web servers. If you want to execute some resource at server side, if you want to get some response, dynamic response, there people are going to use what their application servers initially. Later on, as per the requirements, web servers are prepared again to generate dynamic responses also. Web servers are recreated or maybe prepared, designed to generate dynamic responses also. Understand my point here? Initially, web servers are mainly for what purpose? Their static responses. Application servers are mainly for what? Their dynamic responses. But later on, as per the requirements, web servers are converted to generate what? Their dynamic responses also. I get my point or not? So because of that reason, nowadays servers are giving some dynamic responses. Even the web servers they're available, they're also be giving some dynamic response. In outside, most of the people are thinking about Tomcat. Most of the people, 70% of the people are saying that Tomcat is a web server. Okay, as per the initial consideration, if it is a web server, it should not generate dynamic response. But now it is generating dynamic response. Understand it clearly? No? So like this, that meanings are varied from time to time. No, but at present, the basic information about this web server and application server is what there. Web server is able to execute only web applications. Application server is able to execute both web applications and distributed applications. Web servers are not providing middleware services by default. Application servers are providing middleware services by default. That information is sufficient. Yes, sir, got or not? Okay, leave this punch can. After completion of this, observe carefully. See, I want to make my computer as a server computer. I want to make my mission as a server mission. So what I have to do? Come on, guys. What I have to do? If I want to make my computer as a server computer, then what I have to do? What I have to do? All right. We need to install server software in my system or not? Then only my system is what there? A server mission. That's okay, fine. Okay, fine. If we install server software If we install server software, then what will happen here now? If we install server software, then we are able to get the following two components. Then we are able to get the following two components. What are the two components now? First one is main server, second one is container. Main server, and what next one? Container. Here we have one important interview question. Try to understand this question clearly. Alright, sir. What is this question now? What is the difference between main server? In other words, people are saying that it is a server. Okay, main server, and what next one again now? Container. What is the difference between these two? Here we have to understand these points also clearly. Right. Observe carefully. For example, this is my server side application, but before this server side application, I want to say that, okay, this is server side application. I can say this web application, for example. Inside the web application, assume it, some components are available. Web components are available. Web components in the sense Java code only, servlets only, or maybe JSPs, for example. Inside the JSPs also, depending on the requirement, we can write Java code. So finally, somewhat Java related content only. Okay. Web component. Web component 1. Web component 2. Web component 3. Like this I have taken. Think of it, their Java code is available. Blindly you can understand it, servlets only. Okay, fine. Now, this is server. This is called as what their main server. Here we are having container. Okay, container. Now here we are having network. Clear? Network is available here. Internet or network, whatever it may be, protocol or something else, whatever it may be. All right, now here we are getting a client. This is client. Client in the sense browser. Client in the sense what there? Browser. Fine, clear. So next one is like what there? After this, when we submit a request from client to the server, first who will take that request? No, network will take that request. Network will carry that request from client to server. Now, who will take that request? No, main server will take this request. Who will take this request? No, main server will take that request. Here, understand it. How to collect a request from network that could be awaited by main server. Main server knows about it. See, if you want to carry some data through the network, no, at sender side we have to perform marshalling and serialization, marshalling. At receiver side also we have to perform what there? Deserialization, unmarshalling. So this kind of network related things are awaited by main server. Main server knows about it, how to collect the request. Main server will check whether this request is for static resource or dynamic resource. Whether the request is for HTML, if the request is for HTML page or for any servlet. Main server will aware about it. If the request is for static resource, no, main server will handle that request. Get the static resource, copy the content of static resource, submit that response, submit that content as a response back to the respective client. Got it or not? But if the request is coming for a dynamic resource like servlet, then immediately what main server will do? Main server will forward that request to the container, and main server will talk with the container. Now the request is coming for a particular dynamic resource, but I'm not capable to execute the dynamic resource. You are the capable person to execute that resource. So take this request and execute the required might be web resource. Got my point or not? Now come again. What's the point I said to you? When we submit requests from client to the server, first request will come to the network. Okay, now network will carry that request to the main server. Now main server will take that request. It knows about it, how to collect that request, and it will check whether this request is coming for static resource or dynamic resource. Static resource is a resource where updations are not available, where dynamic resource is a resource where updations are available, frequent updations. Example for static resource is what their HTML file. HTML page is an example for what their static resource, and example for dynamic resource is what their servlet. Example for dynamic resource is what their servlet. Okay, now observe carefully. All right, sir. Now static resource here we are getting. Okay, fine. If it is the static resource, if it is the static resource, okay, then it able to handle that resource. It will get the copy of the static resource. It will send that copy as a response to the respective client. But if the request is coming for dynamic resource, main server will forward that request to the container. Now, what container is able to do? No, container will identify the requested web resource at server. Container will identify the requested web resource at server. For example, if that web resource is a servlet, then immediately container will execute this servlet. Container will execute that server side code servlet. How container will execute this servlet? No, observe carefully. First of all, tell me how JVM is executing our core Java program. When I provide Java space test and command prompt, what JVM is doing? JVM is immediately loading that class test. JVM is searching for main method. If it is available, JVM is executing that main method. Am I right or not? No response. Core Java program I'm asking now. Okay, right, good. All right, sir. Now JVM is able to execute that main method directly. Inside the main method, whatever the logic we provided, that logic will be executed by JVM directly. Got it or not? Fine. But when it comes to the web application, when it comes to the servlets, server is not a JVM. Of course, internally it might be used with JVMs. That is a different story. That means container I'm talking, no? Container is not a JVM. Internally it might be used with some JVMs. That's a different story. But container has to execute this as servlet. Moreover, servlet is a server-side program. It is not like a core Java program. More clearly, servlet doesn't have any main method. It doesn't have main method. So without having main method, how we are able to execute this particular servlet program? If we come for this point, answer is very clear. Every server-side component must have a particular individual life cycle methods are available, life cycle phases are available. The server side components must be executed by the life cycle methods only, not by using main methods. If it is a servlet life cycle is available. If it is a JSP life cycle is available. If it is an EJB life cycle is available. Are you get my point or not? Each and every server side component must have its own life cycle. Now, if container wants to execute this server side component, container must know the life cycle of the server side component. By following that life cycle actions only, by following that, by executing that life cycle methods only, container is able to execute server side resource. So container is able to execute server side resource by following its life cycle. Already container has the implementation of the life cycles, server side components life cycles. By executing that life cycle activities only, the server side components are going to be executed. Okay, by the execution of this particular server side component, definitely if it is a servlet, no, some response will be generated. Some response will be generated. Again, I'm asking one question to you. Here, who is generating response? Is that container or a servlet? Who is generating response? Okay, core Java program I have written. Who is generating output? Is that main method or JVM? Tell me, main method or JVM? JVM is generating output. JVM has to execute that program. Then only output we are able to get. Without executing program, will you get any output? For example, I have written main method and main class now. Just only I have written it. Will I get any output? JVM must execute that program. Then only output is coming or not. Here also the servlet is written. But when response will be generated from the servlet? When a container is executed. When server is executed that servlet, then only response will be generated. Am I right or not? So here the point what I'm telling to you, when container is executing this particular web component by following its life cycle, then only response is generated from the server side component. That means container will generate this response. Container is generating response. When container is generating that response now, immediately what container will do here? Immediately container will dispatch that response back to the main server. And here main server knows about it, how to dispatch that response to the client through the network. But container does not aware about it, how to dispatch that response to the client through the network. Only main server knows about it. Then immediately what that main server is able to do, main server will submit that response to the network. Now here, what this network is able to do here, immediately network is able to carry that response from server mission to the respective client mission. Now client is able to take that response to the respective client mission, where it able to display that response to the user. Okay, anyway, I don't require information about like what their client to network and all these things. Comparison between main server and container. What exactly the job of the main server? What is the job of the container? I require this information. Straightly, I'm asking some question there. Now try to understand it. No, when I submit request from client to the server, who is taking my request first? Okay, forget about network here. I'm talking about main server and container only. Right, sir. Who is taking our request first? No, main server. Main server is taking our request. Got it or not? Okay, what main server is doing? Checking whether request is coming for static resource or dynamic resource. If the request is coming for static resource, who will handle it? No, main server itself will handle it. It able to send some response back to the respective client. If the request is coming for dynamic resource, who will handle that request? No, container. Immediately main server will forward that request to the container. Now container will handle that. How container will handle that request? No, now container has to identify what is the requested resource at server side application. Okay, when it identifies the requested resource at server side application, directly container will execute that requested resource. By the execution, how it able to execute that requested resource? No, by following life cycle actions. It means that container must have that server-side components lifecycle implementation or not. JVM is executing your main method in the sense main method call is already available inside the JVM or not. Main method call is available inside the JVM. Then only JVM is executing that main method. Similarly, if container is executing your web component by following its lifecycle in the sense all the lifecycle methods of this servlet must be available inside the container or not. So container must have the server-side components lifecycle implementation. By executing that lifecycle implementation only, the server-side component will be executed. By the execution of the server-side component execution only, some response will be generated to the container. Some response will be generated by the container. That response will be given to the main server. Now, what is the job of the main server? Main server will dispatch the response to the respective client through the network. How to interact with the network, how to push that response to the network, that everything known by what? Main server. Main server knows about it, how to dispatch that response to the respective client. Okay, one straightforward question, we have to understand it clearly. In between main server and container, who knows about the life cycles of the server side components? Container has the implementations of the server side components. Main server doesn't have any implementation of the server side component. Who is the executor of the servlet? That's my question. Container is the executor of the servlet. Main server is not the executor of the servlet. That's it. These are the various points here we have to understand clearly now. Right, sir? Not just simple. Just I want to give some document about it. Try to understand it clearly. Let me take this diagram also. So these introduction classes are very, very important. If you are aware about it, then it's very simple to understand the flow of executions of the feature concepts now. Right, so now understand it clearly. What is the difference between main server and a container? If you understand this point here, first one is when we submit a request from client to the server, main server will take the request and the main server will perform the following actions. Tell me, sir, what main server is able to perform the activities? No, observe carefully. First one is what there. Now tell me the very first point. No, main server will take the request from network. Will take the request from network. That means network in the sense from what there, from client. Yes, sir. Okay, main server will take the request from the network or maybe from client. Next one is main server will check whether request is coming for the static resource or dynamic resource. Static resource or dynamic resource. Okay, it will check it. If the request is coming for a static resource, then the main server will handle that request. Main server will check whether the request is coming for static resource or dynamic resource. If the request is coming for a static resource, then the main server will handle that request. Okay. If the request is coming for the dynamic resource, if the request is coming for the dynamic resource, then the main server will forward request to the container, where the container will perform the following actions. Right, sir. What container is able to perform the required actions? Fine. Now here we can understand clearly. Observe carefully. Point number one. What container is able to do? No. Container will identify the requested resource. Container will identify the requested resources like servlet or JSP and so on, whatever it may be. Next one is what there? Container will execute the requested resource by following their life cycle. By following their life cycle. Container will generate a response from the web resource. Container will generate a response from the web resource. Okay. And container will generate response from the web resource. Then after that, container will send the generated response to the main server. That's it. With this, all formalities with what the main server, that means container, is completed. Then what next one here? After this, now what main server will do now? Right, so now main server will dispatch the generated response to the respective client through the network. That's it. Main server will dispatch the generated response to the respective client through the network. That's it. They are the responsibilities here, we can understand clearly. All right, sir. Now here, note kind of point here what I am telling there about this overall point. One more. That means the same point I want to give in a different way. What is that point here? Main server is not responsible to execute server side resources. Why? Because main server is not responsible to execute server side resources. Why? Because what is the reason for it? Now tell me why. Because main server doesn't have the server side resources life cycle implementations. Main server does not aware about the server side resources life cycle. It doesn't aware about it. That's why it's unable to execute what their server side resources. If it knows about the server side resources life cycle, it may be executed, but it doesn't aware about what the server side resources life cycle implementations. But only container can aware the server side resources life cycle. Only container can aware about the server side resources life cycle implementations. So only container is able to execute server side resources. That's it, sir. Now there are the points here we have to understand about this content. Only container is able to execute server side resources. There are the points here we have to understand. Yes, sir. All of you are getting clarity or not? Fine, sir. So this is total point here, but here itself I'm giving the total content here. So here we can understand these are the requests and they are the responses here. No, only main server will forward request the container. Container will execute the server side components and giving some response back to the respective client through the network. That's okay. So this is the point here we understood. Next one is after that. Okay, fine. What is the difference between main server and container? We understood clearly. Okay, fine. But containers are divided into two ways. Different types of containers are available. Containers are divided into the two ways. What are the two ways of these containers actually? Containers are divided into two ways. What are the two ways of division for the containers? No. Number one, as per the server side components implementation or as per the technologies which we used to prepare the server side components, there are containers. There are some containers. What are the various containers as per the server side technologies? No, servlet container to execute servlets, JSP container to execute JSPs, EJB container to execute EJB components. If I get my point or not? To execute servlets, we have a separate container. What is this container? No, servlet container. To execute JSP components, no, separate container. That is what their JSP container. To execute EJB component, no, separate container. That is what their EJB container. Like this. like this. Different containers are available. It's not like one or two. Different containers are available. Servlet container, JSP container, or both are web components. These two containers are commonly called as web containers. These containers are commonly called as what? They're web containers. Why? Because servlet is a web component, JSP is also a web component. So web containers, this is a common name. Okay, fine. Okay, fine. These are like what they're as per the technology which we use to prepare this server-side application. These containers are prepared like this. Leave this one. Second classification. As per the containers of physical existence with the main server. As per the containers of physical existence with the main server, there are three types of containers. As per the servers, as per the containers of physical existence with the main server, there are three types of containers. What are the three types of containers now? First one is standalone container. First one is what there? Standalone container. Second one is in process container. Second one is what there? In process container. Third one is out of process container. Out of process container. They are the overall three types of containers here we are having as per the physical existence of the containers with the main server. Is it? All of you are getting clarity or not? So containers are classified in two ways. One is what their technology based. Second one is what their containers physical existence with the main server. As per the technology based, what are the various containers are available? Servlet container, JSP container, EJB container, and so on. These containers are responsible for executing the respective server side components. But as per the containers physical existence, how many containers are available here? Three containers are available. What are the three containers? No. First one is what there? Standalone container. Second one is what there? In process container. Third one is what there? Out of process container. And one more point I am telling there. These are the basic concepts now. But all servers are implementing the same as these containers or not? It's a doubtful case. But generalization I'm telling there. So at the end, WebLogic vendor provided implementation is only be available in WebLogic. We cannot set for all the three types of containers inside the WebLogic server. Glassfish vendor has provided what they implemented, that is only be available. We cannot search for these things inside the container. But generalization I'm telling there. In general, these are the various classifications of the containers in outside. But all these are implemented or not implemented by the servers or not, it is depending on their implementation part. On the basis of the only here, we are able to implement the content here. But okay, fine, we can understand it clearly. All right, sir. Now here, if you observe this clearly, in web applications, right, sir. In general, containers are divided into the following two ways. All right, sir. Now the number one, as per the server-side technologies, as per the server-side technologies which we use it to prepare server-side components, as per the server-side technologies which we use it to prepare server-side components, there are some containers. There are some containers. Right. Containers like what there? Containers like there are containers. Containers like what there? Number one, first one is servlet container to execute servlets. Number two, JSP container to execute JSPs. Next one is EJB container to execute EJB component, EJBs, to execute EJBs. That's okay, fine. These are like what there, what I'm telling to you. They're the content here. Next one is what? After completion of this, as per the container physical existence with the as per the container's physical existence with the main server. With the main server, there are there are three types of the containers. There are three types of containers. What are the three types of containers here? We can understand that very first one is what there? Standalone container. Right, sir. What is this standalone container? No? Observe carefully. It is an integration of main server and container, main server and container as a single program. That's it. Nothing else. Only a single program is acting as main server and is acting as what their container. A single program is acting as main server and is acting as what their container. That's why it is called as what their standalone container. That we have to understand. Okay, fine. Next one is after this. The second one is like what there? In process container. All right, sir. Now, what is this in process container? It is a, okay, fine. Here, container is a process inside the main server. Understand my point here? The container is a process inside the main server. Main server is available. There inside this a small module is what their container is, an inside the container is existed. Here the container is the container is existed. The container is existed inside the main server. That's it. Inside main server is main thing. Inside this a module, small module is what their container. All right. So next one is out of process container. Out of process container. What about this out of process container? Understand it clearly. Now understand it now. What is the meaning of this out of process container? Here the container exists outside of the main server. If the container exists in outside of the main server. That means container is a separate process, main server is a separate process. Main server is a different one, container is a different, two different processes. Both are not related, both are two different. Of course, communication is available between them, but both are two different processes. Standalone container is an integration of both main server and container, single program. Next one is what their in process container. What is the meaning of it? No, in process container here no. All right, sir. Inside the main server, a separate process is what their container. Out of process container. What is this? What they know? What is this actually? Is a container exists in outside of the main server. Exists outside of the main server. So both are different here. Both are two independent processes clearly. So these are the story. This is a story about like what their containers and their types here. What we are getting clearly. Right, sir. Now this is somewhat information about the client server architecture and server information there. Server details we understood, then client server architecture totally here we completed. If you observe the total concepts what I discussed here in servlets now, first of all I have given introduction about types of applications there. After providing types of applications, then what next one I have given there? Then what is static response and what is dynamic response I have given. After that, understanding the static response and dynamic response, we started with web technologies like CGI, servlets, and JSPs, and so on. What are the difference between CGI and servlet, and what are the difference between servlets and JSPs? We understood. After completion of that, then immediately we started with what is their client server architecture. In a client server architecture, we understood what is a client and its responsibilities, what is protocol and its responsibility, and what is a server and its responsibilities. All the points here we understood. So after completion of this total client server architecture, the next topic is like what there? Steps to prepare first web application. Simply speaking, first servlet application. Steps to prepare first web application or first servlet application. How we are going to prepare this? What are the various steps here we required? Okay. So you'll understand this topic on tomorrow. Tomorrow, firstly, we are going to start this one. Again, I'm telling there. Previously, I said to you, next to 10 days of topics are important. Out of these 10 days of topics, no, almost all 5 days of topics are completed. 4 or 5 days, no. Remaining 4 or 5 days of topics are important. Especially first application development, the steps are very, very important. I'll give a strong base to understand web technologies totally. So don't miss that classes, Kernel. Even if I miss anything, nothing is going to be happen. But if you miss that, definitely something is going to be happen. So without failure, try to attend for the classes now, right? Up to the completion of first servlet application. Okay, then your attendance, your concentration is very, very important. That's it. Thank you. Thanks a lot. We'll meet on tomorrow. Can I attend 10 a.m. advanced Java offline classes? Sir? When, sir? When 10 a.m.? No, at present 10 a.m. advanced Java class are not going to be happen. At 10 a.m. core Java is going on. Moinuddin, Naimuddin. 10 a.m. core Java class are going on, not advanced Java. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks a lot.